More scary, unsettling, creepy Reddit stories. Let's get into this. Also, I'm trying to hit 500 subs by the end of the year, so thank you if you're subscribed. And also, I post all my videos on Spotify as a podcast. So links are in the description there as well if you want to follow me on Spotify. And let's get into this. Strange encounter while hunting in rural Texas. True story. Was told you guys might like this here. This happened when I was growing up, around 2004 or 2005, when I was about 13 years old. It took place in a rural area, a good ways outside the town of Uvalde, Texas. The town itself was really small back then and not much to look at. It's just one of those towns that really isn't on the way to anywhere important. My father knew someone who owned a deer lease that was about 1,000 acres, I think, down outside of that area, and was complaining about a ton of hogs that were tearing up their land. Being open season on hogs in the south, my dad thought he would surprise me that summer and take me down for a week to go hunting for them. Not only did that help him with networking for his job, but also gave us some quality father/son time. I remember the drive down there from Dallas was torture. It was about 7 hours in my dad's hard-top Jeep Wrangler. That car was so uncomfy, I hated it. All I had to do was either stare out the window or try and beat Super Mario Land 2 on my Game Boy Pocket, something I was never able to accomplish in my youth, LOL. The drive, obviously, took most of the day so we got there in the early evening. The owner of the land had told my dad that he hadn't had anyone lease it that year yet, and the cabin in the property might be a little rough and dusty. I didn't really care. At this point in my life, I'd been in scouts for a couple of years and spent a lot of my free time in the woods or fishing with friends. Needless to say, I was pretty comfortable roughing it. So after unlocking the gate and driving to the cabin on the land, we settled in. The cabin was pretty rough, dust and dirt everywhere. Flies, I remember that it looked like some raccoons had gotten into the cabin and crapped on the floor. After cleaning up a bit and getting the sleeping bags out, then setting up the cots, we decided to sleep. Something about that night was weird. I never was able to get comfortable enough to fall asleep for any restful amount. I couldn't put my finger on why, but I had that feeling of being watched. I was finally able to drift off for what I guessed was an hour, maybe. When we woke up, it was early, about 7 a.m. We decided to scout around the land for tracks and signs of hogs and find a good place to set up a blind. It was the summer and horribly hot in the afternoons, so morning was the best time to be out and about. After walking for an hour or so, we came to an area of trees, lightly dense, and luckily found some signs of hogs. Typical torn up ground where they had been rooting, so we followed them into the trees. I was looking for more signs when my dad stopped me with his arm. I remember looking up and seeing someone standing about 50 yards away. Some of their body was blocked by trees. This was private land, so they definitely weren't supposed to be there. We also had confirmation from the owner before we got to the lease that nobody was there, not to mention the gate was locked up when we first arrived. The person was wearing some bright-coloured red jacket. We slowly walked toward them. My dad called out something like, "Hey, we're hunters, this is private land." The person didn't move at all, dead still. We were about 30 yards away and could see that he was turned away from us with his hands in his pockets. Weird thing was that the person was in a ski jacket and what looked to be ski pants. Now this is Texas in the summer. It was about 98 outside by then. My dad called out again, no reaction. He told me to stay behind him and unsnap the clip to his pistol holster. That's all we had at the time since we were only scouting the area. The rifles were back at the cabin. We approached the person's right side and then my dad told me to stay put about 20 yards away. I stayed and crouched down, watched him circle around to the front of the man, all the while talking to him, asking if he was okay. He finally passed around to the front of the man and my dad stood straight up with a confused look on his face. I called out and said, "What's wrong?" and he called back saying, "It's a mannequin." I walked over to it while my dad stood there staring, and as I got closer, one thing stood out the most. The clothes it was wearing were brand new. No dust, sap, bird droppings, or signs of being outside for more than day at most. At that moment, I looked at my dad and could see him get worried. Almost immediately after, I felt that feeling again, like we were being watched, and I knew my dad felt it too. I wanted to start crying. I remember feeling suddenly so scared. My dad whispered, "We're leaving right now." He grabbed my hand and drew his pistol. He scanned the area the whole way back while I was trying to hold back panicked tears. We got back as fast as we could. I was terrified, so it felt like an eternity, but in reality was only about 45 minutes max. After returning, we packed up and beat feet. We drove back home that day and didn't talk much on the way back. I remember right after we left, my dad called his buddy, the owner of the land, and he was confused. He said that he would go check it out next week when he was in the area. He also said that he had never had an issue with people because his property was high fenced. My dad normally isn't a paranoid person, but me being young and the least possibly having someone there we didn't know about, he decided to be cautious and just get out of there. After we got back home, we talked, and my dad wasn't able to sleep the night before as well. He had the same feeling, but didn't want to wake me up because he thought I was sleeping too. Turns out that next week he got a call from his buddy, and he checked the whole property and never found any trace of anyone, no mannequin or anything. That story still makes my hair stand on end. No idea what that was, but the paranoid man in me thinks it was some kind of trap or something. Not the creepiest thing that happened to me in the woods, but Death Top 3. So whoever was out there, I'm glad we never met. Always change your locks when you buy a new house. So this happened in 2013 and I was 17. My family was looking at this house and the owner showed up and talked with my parents. It seemed like a nice older man, built the house himself. It's a pretty nice 2-story house overlooking a river. Anyway, I was standing back watching everyone talk, and as the owner is talking and laughing, there's a break in the conversation where he turns away from my parents and his expression completely and instantly changes from happy to the most sinister and hateful scowl I've ever seen. I don't think he noticed me watching. It probably appeared to be on my phone as my head was down. As soon as he turned back, he instantly went back to smiling. It was so creepy and honestly made me feel sick. I told my mom, who said it was weird, but maybe he's just awkward. So we got the house, so we moved in, and the next weekend my family's going to church, but I don't feel like going. So they all leave me at home. So it's Sunday morning about 11 a.m. when I hear really loud banging outside. It's rhythmic and coming from the side of the house. I was on the other side of the house on the second floor. Honestly, my dumb ass thought it was maybe the wind. It was stormy that day, and I didn't think much of it. It stopped after about 5 minutes. 10 minutes later, I hear walking around downstairs, chairs moving, kitchen cabinets opening and the fridge opening. I immediately quietly go lock my door, grab my baseball bat and call 911. While I tell them my address, I text my mom and tell her that someone is in the house and that I've called 911. At that point, the 911 operator said that someone was 10 minutes out. I tell her sheesh, because I heard steps walking towards the stairs. Basically, the house is so thin I could track where he was in the house. At this time, my mom responded that she's on her way. She's 30 minutes away. So here's a 17-year-old, 5'2", 100-pound girl hunkered in her room, full well knowing that if he came in, he'd overpower me and take the bat. I was freaking terrified. I heard him walk down the hallway towards my door. I saw the handle turn and stop. It was locked, and I heard him stand there. He didn't move. I could hear his breathing. It felt like forever, but Really, I think it was about 10 seconds. I heard him turn and go back down. I heard the back door open and shut. And about 3 minutes later, the police pulled up. The 911 operator asked me if I could let them in or if they needed to force it. I knew he had left, so I let them in. No one was there, no sign of forced entry, nothing. When my mom got there, she looked at my stepdad and asked if he had changed the locks. He hadn't. I think the creepiest part and what really validated my story was that my mom had just vacuumed the hallway, and there were shoe prints that were larger than anyone in our house. And the police hadn't been up there, and they stopped just outside my room. He died about a year after that. Please don't forget to change your locks. When I was a little girl, my brother and I shared a room. We were 15 months apart. And in our room, we had a wood divider down the middle because we fought so much. Anyways, I was maybe between 4 to 6. I can't remember exact age. And it was Easter time. Actually, it was the Saturday night before Easter Sunday. And I heard something in our room. I thought it was the Easter bunny. So I peeked out of my covers and I swear to this day it was the real Easter bunny. I saw a black vest with chains and a pocket watch hanging down and some glasses hanging out of the other top pocket. He walked over and I shot my head back under the covers. He sat down on my bed. I became very scared. My older sisters had said the Easter bunny kills bad kids and kids who try to peek at him, and I was definitely a little shit either way. And pulled the covers taut and could feel him lean over me and get very close to my face. I peeked out again with one eye and I saw an eye staring back at me. Then a pillow go over my head. I slowly turned my head to the side because I couldn't breathe and didn't know what was going on, but I got a breath and held it. In my little pea-brain head, I had a voice that just said, "Hold it in," like I'm playing a game. Well, I did. Then the Easter bunny got up off the bed. I could hear him and the chains on his vest rattle as he walked. Then back through the window. I was so scared I didn't know what to do. I just laid there under the covers with the sheet pulled taut and the pillow on top of my head and eventually fell asleep, I guess. I honestly don't remember if I tried to wake my parents or not. I just know I woke up in my bed the next morning thinking it was all a dream. I told my sisters and brother that the Easter bunny came and sat on my bed last night as we went through our Easter candy and got ready to go for our Easter egg hunt. My mom and dad overheard, and the next thing I know, they called the police, and there were footprints outside of mine and my bro's bedroom window, and the screen had been ripped off and the window slightly slid open. Years later, I found out a sicko had been trying to hurt me to get back at my dad. He was a biker. My dad was too. Henceforth, the black leather vest and chains, and apparently that wasn't the only time he broke into our house, and that's not the only time he tried to hurt me or talk to me. He used to call and talk to me all the time, apparently. I don't remember any of it, but that one incident. The one day I woke up late may have saved my life. I've told this story in other places on other accounts before, but it bears repeating. One day, when I was an elementary schooler, I think probably 3rd or 4th grade, I was awoken by my mom in a rush. She'd overslept, and since she always woke me up in the morning, this meant that I too overslept, and now there was just no way I was going to be ready for school early enough to get on the school bus. IIRC. School started at 8 a.m. and my bus pickup time was 7 a.m, but it was already like 6:40 or something, and I was still in my pajamas and hadn't even had breakfast yet. So Mom decided that today we would just tell the bus driver to go on ahead and she would take me to school, which would give me plenty of time to get ready. So I'm sitting there at the dining room table eating breakfast, still in my pajamas, and it's now about 6:50. We hear the bus pull up, about 10 minutes earlier than usual. My mom peeks her head out of the door into the foggy morning and waves the bus on. She closes the door and comes back inside, but the bus doesn't pull away. There's a knock at the door and Mom opens it to find a man in a bus driver uniform. He explains that he's a substitute driver because the regular driver called in sick. He says he knows he's a few minutes early since he wanted to get an early start on the route since he didn't know it well. Mom explains to him that she was going to take me to school since we woke up late. He gets visibly upset and says that he can wait a few minutes since he's already running ahead of schedule. My mom insists that no, I won't be ready to go in a few minutes, and tells him to go on ahead. He seemed angry about this, but turned around and got back in the bus and left. I returned to eating my breakfast and still don't have my school clothes on at this point. But at 7 a.m. sharp, another bus pulls up to my house. Mom thinks this is weird and goes outside to talk to them. She comes back inside looking terrified, but doesn't really say anything about it and tells me to finish getting ready for school. At the time, I didn't know what happened, but Mom would end up telling me a few years later. When she went to this second bus, she found that it was being driven by my regular bus driver, and it was full of all the other kids that are usually on the route. The other bus was empty, by the way. Mom asked the driver about the substitute driver and about him calling in sick. I never called in sick. There is no substitute driver on my route, he says. The driver immediately called dispatch in a panic and told my mom to go inside and call the police, which she did without me knowing, and report this incident. There was absolutely no one doing my driver's route that day. Whoever this was most likely a kidnapper who had targeted me. I never heard anything about it again, not even if someone else had ended up being picked up by this mysterious fake bus driver. The chances are, had I gotten on that bus, I would have never made it to school or back home. And if Mom hadn't overslept on that specific day, I would have been on that bus. Michael. Alright, I wanna tell a story. A true one. When I was 2, almost 3, I had imaginary friends, as most children do. One particular one was Michael. There was another, Sally, but she'll become important later. Anyway, we would do everything together. From playing on the swing set to playing with dolls. Even this one time I made my mom make Michael soup so he could eat while I was. As time went on, things got weird. As a kid I didn't notice, but it was only recently I realized this. I had told my mom that Michael's house had burnt down and he needed a place to stay, so I asked if he could stay with us, to which my mom happily obliged. I don't exactly remember what happened, but I told my mom that he couldn't stay with us because he was being mean, and I made her kick him out temporarily. It was only one of the many times I made her yell at / kick Michael out of the house. He would often come back because he needed a place to stay and real food to eat. I had told my mom he was eating leaves and the bugs. One night I was sleeping in my crib bed thing and I looked at my closet for a solid 20 minutes. Next thing I know, I'm crying, full on hiccuping and snot running down my face. I climbed over the bars, keep in mind I'm literally almost 3, and run out to my mom who's on the phone with my aunt. My mom immediately asked me what's wrong, why am I crying, how did I get out of my bed by myself, etc, etc. I tried to tell her the best I could that Michael was in my closet and I didn't want him there. I grabbed the phone from my mom and told my aunt to call the cops, that Michael was going to hurt me. I'd also told my mom that he hit me. My mom was very confused, reassuring me that he wasn't going to, that he wasn't even real. She picked me up and brought me there while she checked everything out. He wasn't there. Nothing was there. A couple of months later, I haven't seen Michael or talked about him. My mom gets a letter in the mail addressed to a Michael Gottlieb, not sure how to spell the last name, and my mom thought nothing of it aside from a bit of uneasiness. Years later, I'm in at least 5th grade or something. My mom's uncle comes over and we're all telling scary stories, and my mom tells them about Michael. He told us he heard something similar to the background story of Michael. He looked it up. There was an Indian tribe a long time ago whose huts burned down. They follow the river to the train tracks, bridle trail behind my house. We go on with the night and then they leave. I was pretty freaked out. Who wouldn't be? But again, I forget about it and I don't think about it for a while. A couple of years later, my stepsister comes over and once again my family is telling ghost stories. When we tell her the one about Michael, she gets freaked out also, soon after she leaves. We get a call about 15 minutes later from her. I'm gonna quote the best I can remember. "Mom, how the hell did you get that post up so quickly?" "What post? What are you talking about?" My stepsister explains that there's a post explaining the same exact thing in around our area. There was no exact address. It talked about how other families who lived in the same house had the same experience with a Michael. There was also something about a Sally and how she should grab people's ankles. Now, my cousin stayed with us after he got out of jail. Nothing bad, don't worry. And he was a bit crazy, so we didn't believe him, but he told us he thought someone grabbed his ankles while he was asleep. That's the only Sally experience we've had, but I just thought about it and thought I would share.